The contrast between the Han's sophisticated civilization and the Yuzhang's traditional ways is just staggering in this section. Watching Yu Fu casually reveal everything from ox-drawn plows and currency to complex animal husbandry, and even mass education plans felt like witnessing a cultural tidal wave. The Yuzhang's reaction, especially Xuan's dawning realization of the Han's sheer scale, was perfectly captured. It makes you wonder how any tribe could possibly resist assimilation, peaceful or otherwise. Then, shifting to the Han homeland and the launch of compulsory schooling. That's nation building on an epic scale. Seeing those kids from Yu Fu's son to the prominent Qubing lining up for their books and pencils hammers home the Han's long-term vision. It's not just about tools, it's about cultivating minds. Meanwhile, Yu Fu's fleet, driven by bold ambition, seems to have found the legendary Great Lake. That discovery, coupled with the potential Yuzhang integration, feels like a massive turning point. What new frontiers, both geographical and societal, are about to open up? To the east of that grassland lay an incredibly vast lake, stretching thousands of miles from north to south, effectively cutting off the grassland from the eastern shore, splitting them into two different worlds. The tribes on the grassland all called it the Sunrise Sea, because the sun rose from there every day, as if it were the sun's home. This lakeshore, stretching for thousands of miles, was their paradise for summer grazing. Every summer and autumn, these herding tribes would migrate to the lakeshore. Here, the water and grass were exceptionally lush, fresh water was plentiful, and game was so abundant it seemed inexhaustible, practically a paradise for them. This good life would last until late autumn. When winter drew near, they had to pack up quickly and migrate to the western valleys to hole up for the winter. In the valleys, there were trees to cut down for firewood to keep warm, and the livestock could find enough forage to get by. But right now, it was only early September, and the days of freezing your tail off were still far away. The nomadic tribes were still lingering lazily by the lake. It was autumn, after all. While those who tilled the soil were busy with the harvest, the grassland herders weren't idle either. They needed their cattle and sheep to graze voraciously, growing fat and strong to survive the winter. The 1,000 Sheep tribe was just one of the countless, utterly unremarkable tribes scattered across the grassland. They were situated on the far northern end of the Great Lake's western shore, in a remote, out-of-the-way spot. Judging by their location alone, it was clear the tribe's strength was nothing special. They simply didn't rank among the prominent groups. But this remote spot had its own advantages. It was close to the great mountains to the north. A few years ago, a merchant caravan with a dozen or so large carts had lumbered out of the mountains, looking to trade on the grassland. The first tribe they encountered was none other than the 1,000 Sheep tribe, stationed in this fringe territory. The 1,000 Sheep tribe was overjoyed. They quickly traded their less valuable livestock for what seemed like treasures: white, salt, ceramic jars, bolts of cloth, and the like. Incidentally, they also exchanged bloodlines with the Han traders, and life suddenly became much more comfortable. The next year, the Han traders returned, this time bringing iron goods like woks and scissors. The tribe's quality of life shot up rapidly. Later, to make things easier, the Han traders simply said, "Don't bother giving us whole sheep anymore, just trade shorn wool." How could Qianyang Yili, chief of the 1,000 Sheep tribe, not appreciate such wonderful, easy marks? Some years prior, he had even had his wife entertain the lead Han trader. Now their mixed-blood child was almost 3 years old, and Yili thought the boy was exceptionally clever. After all, they firmly believed that the more distant the bloodlines, the smarter the offspring. But this year, Qianyang Yili craned his neck waiting, yet there was stubbornly no sign of the Han caravan. At first, he wondered if something had delayed them. But more than half a year went by. The prime trading season slipped away, and there was still not a whisper of them. Everyone in the 1,000 Sheep tribe began to sigh in dismay. Before the Han tribe sold salt, it wasn't that the grasslands had none at all. It was brought from the distant south, laboriously transported by the horse teams of a tribe called Shin. The quantity was small, and it was prohibitively expensive. The crucial point was, the Jin merchants couldn't be bothered to travel all the way to the far north. Their small supply of salt would sell out long before they got there. What was the point in traveling further north? They simply turned back home to count their earnings. So the 1,000 Sheep tribe was perpetually short on salt, a shortage that made them desperate. Without the Han traders, they could only tough it out, sometimes drinking animal blood to supplement their meager salt intake. As a last resort, they'd pay exorbitant prices to buy second-hand salt from the larger southern tribes who had obtained it, getting thoroughly fleeced by the middlemen in the process. It was an utterly miserable state of affairs. This year was even worse. The Han tribe hadn't arrived, plunging the 1,000 Sheep tribe back into the miserable predicament of salt scarcity. What was even more bizarre, even the Shin tribe from the south wasn't distributing salt as usual. They funneled their entire salt supply to some fellow in the southern grasslands named Modun. This Modun put the word out. Want salt? Fine. Bring your cattle and sheep to trade with me, but my prices are even more cutthroat than the Shin or the Han. Moreover, it's not just livestock I want. You effectively have to become my follower. Do whatever I say. Disobey? Then no salt for you. This caused an uproar. Many tribes refused to accept this. Who do you think you are? Why should we obey you? We're not buying, we'll just take yours by force. And so fighting erupted across the grasslands, filled with the clang of metal on metal. Initially, some hotheads actually managed to seize some salt, but soon the tide turned. Modun had somehow acquired a batch of bronze stirrups. With these gadgets, he assembled a unit of heavy armored cavalry. They were like armored juggernauts, on the grasslands, rampaging everywhere. Anyone who stood against them met with disaster. As it happened last year, the Han caravan had clashed with the original Shin caravan, dealing them a crushing defeat and seizing many valuable goods. This started a serious feud between them. Later, the Shin tribe, seeking revenge, instigated the Snow Wolf tribe to launch a sneak attack on the Han caravan. However, the night raid crashed against the Han's iron wall-like wagon formation. They were then repeatedly charged down by the Han heavy cavalry. They seized absolutely nothing and instead suffered devastating losses. The Han tribe even piled up the enemy corpses on the grassland to create a jingguan, a gruesome victory mound made of bodies, and planted a large banner, proclaiming, "Those who challenge the mighty Han, however distant, shall be annihilated." That banner is still fluttering defiantly in the wind. After that battle, the name Han tribe became synonymous with formidable across the grasslands. Most tribes trembled in fear and no longer dared to harbor any designs against the Han. But there were also shrewd figures who grasped the key elements. For instance, the Han's bridles, stirrups, high pommel saddles, heavy armor, and long swords. The impact these items had on combat effectiveness was undeniable. Modun was one of the particularly shrewd ones. He imitated the Han heavy cavalry and cobbled together his own imitation version. After linking up with the Shin tribe's newly appointed trade elder, Niu Wei, he managed to obtain bronze stirrups. Although he lacked the high pommel saddles, stirrups alone were enough to massively upgrade his warriors' capabilities. Stirrups gave riders a stable base while bouncing on horseback, enabling them to perform more complex maneuvers, wear heavier armor, and wield heavier weapons. That was the origin of Modun's cavalry. They lacked the Han's advanced lacquers and couldn't replicate their sophisticated lamellar leather armor. However, by layering raw cowhide piece by piece onto their bodies, they could improvise functional armor. If one layer wasn't enough, they added a second. He also copied the Han heavy cavalry's helmet masks, fashioning bucket-shaped helmets from stitched rawhide that covered the entire head, leaving only the eyes visible. These heavy cavalry eschewed bows and arrows, relying solely on long spears and javelins. To the other grassland tribes, who primarily used arrows tipped with bone or stone, this level of protection seemed freakishly high. 2 layers of rawhide armor could essentially shrug off such primitive projectiles. Meanwhile, the javelins and long spears of Modun's heavy cavalry could easily pierce through their opponents. Of course, Modun didn't have many of these expensive heavy cavalry, 500 at the very most, and he treasured them like the apple of his eye. But even this small force could often rout the enemy in a single charge, leaving them utterly broken and scattered. Relying on this killer combination, heavy cavalry in one hand and white salt in the other, Modun rapidly rose to power on the grasslands. He recruited a host of subservient tribes as his followers, using generous amounts of white salt to secure their loyalty. In battle, he would send his followers' light cavalry in first as cannon fodder to absorb losses. Once the enemy was sufficiently weakened, he deployed his own armored juggernaut heavy cavalry to clean up. He generously distributed the plundered livestock and captives among his followers. Consequently, his followers became even more fiercely loyal, rallying tightly around him. In just 6 months, the population under Modun's control soared to 120,000, including nearly 20,000 warriors capable of drawing a bow. He became the undisputed power in the southeastern grasslands. But there were also some hard-boned tribes who paid him no heed. For instance, the tribe of Suritu in the central grasslands. They maintained good relations with the Han, and Suritu had even sent men to assist when the Han dealt with the Snow Wolf tribe. Suritu lacked Modun's bronze stirrups, but he was resourceful and believed in self-reliance. Using materials like bone and bamboo, he fashioned crude makeshift stirrups. For example, he would thread hemp rope through a bamboo tube and hang one on each side of the saddle to serve as a footrest. Though these contraptions weren't durable and broke easily, their advantage was that they were simple and cheap to produce. So cheap you could use them once and discard them without regret. Furthermore, Suritu had previously purchased some horse carts from the Han, and remarkably, he began to imitate the Han's defensive tactics using a wagon formation. Of course, his own carts were far from sufficient, but Modun had made so many enemies across the grasslands that many defeated warriors and remnants of tribes he had plundered flocked to Suritu's side. Other tribes, fearing annexation by Modun, also jumped on the bandwagon and joined Suritu's alliance. They pooled the carts they had purchased from the Han, cut timber, gathered antlers, and constructed makeshift defensive works. Following Suritu's method, they also crafted simple stirrups and managed to scrape together a force of several hundred heavy cavalry. Although their quality was incomparable to Modun's genuine heavy cavalry, they somehow managed to withstand his offensives, halting his northward push to unify the grasslands in the central region. However, Suritu led a tribal coalition. The members had banded together purely out of fear of Modun, seeking mutual protection. They acknowledged Suritu as their leader, but, unlike Modun's followers, had not sworn personal oaths of loyalty. Consequently, Suritu could only maintain a defensive posture. Launching an offensive was unthinkable. This motley alliance, composed of groups with varying motives, could hold together reasonably well on defense. After all, fearing death, none dared to shirk their duty. But asking them to launch an offensive? Quite apart from whether they had the courage, they would likely scatter like frightened birds at the first sign of trouble. Thus, the two major powers on the grasslands temporarily settled into an uneasy stalemate. But Modun, controlling the salt supply, held the initiative. He wasn't remotely concerned about Suritu's stubborn defense. In his eyes, Suritu's resistance was merely a death throw. His own followers were fiercely loyal, he controlled the salt distribution, held the offensive advantage, and could share the spoils of war among his men. Put simply, he controlled tangible rewards. What did Suritu have to offer? Practically nothing. Before long, that loose alliance, held together only by fear, would inevitably disintegrate on its. He wouldn't even need to lift a finger. He just had to wait. The remaining tribes on the grassland faced a choice: quickly pick a side, or keep a wide berth from both powers, staying uninvolved and avoiding contact. The Thousand Sheep tribe, however, was relatively untouched. Neither of the major powers bothered with them. They were just an insignificant entity on the periphery, too marginal for anyone to pay attention to. Qianyang Yili actually found a certain peace in their obscurity. It was just that life without salt was utterly bland and joyless. Every day, Qianyang Yili gazed towards the northern mountains, his eyes practically worn out from watching. He longed desperately for the Han caravan to make a grand return, hoping their arrival would somehow disrupt the salt-fueled war. He wasn't the only one. Suritu's alliance harbored the same hope. The price of their resistance against Modun was the severing of their salt routes. They could no longer rely on the Shin tribe. Who knew what sort of underhanded deal the Shin had struck with Modun to make them back him so completely? Thus, the alliance pinned all its hopes on the Han tribe, the one power that neither the Shin nor Modun dared to cross. More than half a tea. Year went by and Qianyang Yili still hadn't seen hide nor hair of the Han. Just when he was nearing despair and ready to give up, a peculiar group arrived. This group also emerged from the northern mountains. What made them peculiar was that they were flying the banners of both the Han tribe and the Shin tribe simultaneously. What sort of bizarre alliance was this? Weren't these two practically mortal enemies just last year? How could they be traveling together now, practically hand in hand? Upon inquiry, they discovered that the Shin tribe had proactively sent emissaries to the Han to sue for peace, and the Han had surprisingly agreed. So now the Han had dispatched a delegation to pay a return visit to the Shin tribe, which explained why they were traveling together. Qianyang Yili wasn't concerned with the details of this rapprochement. He simply wanted to buy some white salt from the Han to alleviate their desperate shortage. But when he made his request, the group's leader, a man named Shuya, didn't immediately agree. They hadn't brought much salt on this trip, he explained, and their purpose wasn't trade. The accompanying merchant group was primarily responsible for logistics and support for the diplomatic mission, and secondarily, perhaps, to settle some old accounts with the Shin tribe. However, faced with Qianyang Yili's earnest pleas, Shuya relented slightly. He said that when the caravan returned before the onset of winter, if they had any surplus white salt, they would sell some to the Thousand Sheep tribe. This was hardly a firm promise, however, and Shuya himself seemed uncertain if it would pan out. Following this, the delegation continued its journey south. As they passed through the territory controlled by Suritu's alliance, Suritu and his followers also approached eagerly, hoping to purchase salt. Shuya gave them the same response. "We really aren't here to trade this time. We're on official business. We have only a limited amount of salt. If any remains when we return, we'll sell you some then." Suritu and his followers had no choice but to wait anxiously. They were also puzzled. How had the Shin and Han tribes, the two main salt suppliers, suddenly ended up in cahoots? The Han delegation continued its journey south, their figures receding into the distance. They watched as autumn passed day by day, and the time for the winter migration drew near. Yet there was still no indication the caravan was returning. If they couldn't acquire sufficient white salt before migrating, the next 6 months or more would be incredibly hard to bear. Right at this critical juncture, the people of Suritu's alliance suddenly spotted the brilliant banners of the Han tribe. Once more. This time, however, the banners weren't approaching over land. Instead, they were coming across the Great Lake behind them, floating in from the Sunrise Sea. The Grassland dwellers, laying eyes on sailboats for the first time, were so stunned their eyeballs nearly fell out. They were once again awestruck by the Han tribe's seemingly heaven-defying manufacturing capabilities. Han people could actually sail across the Sunrise Sea. "Clan Uncle, look, we've reached the grasslands. Look at all the sheep, and so many people. They're all watching us. They're waving," exclaimed a half-grown boy named Yuji, jumping excitedly on the upper deck above the main cabin. I see them," replied a calm, steady man named Yu Fu, his eyes fixed on the western shore. He immediately issued orders. "Relay this. Take. In half sail. Dispatch the sounding boat to check the water depth near the bank. We've never put in here before. Make sure it isn't too shallow. It would be embarrassing to run the ship aground." 3 days ago, when Yu Fu led the fleet to this great lake, everyone was thrilled. thinking about the fame and fortune the boss had mentioned just days before. Their eyes practically glowed green with anticipation. But once they were actually on the lake, the initial excitement wore off, replaced by a bone-chilling realization. Why? They'd run into major trouble. The Han tribe's development had skyrocketed. From launching their first crude wooden boat to these large sailing ships, it had only taken about 3 years in total. Before, their boats had only splashed about in rivers. Whether it was a small channel dozens of meters wide or a great river hundreds of meters across, they could always see both banks. But now, they had plunged headfirst into this boundless lake. Water stretched in all directions, looking the same everywhere. If they sailed blindly, they were sure to end up going in circles, unable even to find the waterway back home. This posed a serious problem. With no landmarks on this endless expanse of water, how were they supposed to navigate? Getting lost on an inland freshwater lake. It was embarrassing even to think about, yet that was exactly their miserable situation. The difficulty was obvious and unavoidable. Fortunately, they weren't completely blind. At least they had the sun and moon in the sky, and in their hands, they had the treasure issued by the chieftain, the compass. Yu Fu quickly calmed everyone down and summoned the captains to his own ship for a meeting. "Let's assume," he began, "that we're currently at the easternmost entrance to this great lake, east of the Grasslands. If we take the cautious approach, hugging the shore and slowly circling around, we definitely won't get lost. Even if we take a wrong turn, we just have to turn back the way we came. Problem solved." The others listened without speaking, but all nodded. It was the safest method. However, Yu Fu's tone shifted. That would be too slow. If things go wrong, we might not even make it home before winter sets in. Don't forget, we drifted downstream to get here, but going back means paddling against the current. Even if we can catch some crosswinds, it will definitely be much more strenuous than coming here. Everyone nodded again. That made sense. They had only been thinking about getting home and had forgotten about the upstream journey. Their speed certainly wouldn't be fast. So what do we do? Do we really have to venture into the center of the lake? There are no reference points out there at all. The captain of Ship 2 sounded a bit panicked. "We have no choice but to head towards the middle," Yu Fu said, spreading his hands helplessly. "Well, in that case." "Don't worry," Yu Fu interrupted him. "At our current speed, how big can this lake possibly be? At most, it'll take a few days of sailing. No matter which direction we go, we're bound to hit the opposite shore eventually. But there's one thing we must remember," he added emphatically. "We don't know our exact location right now, and you can't draw lines on water. Therefore, we must travel in a straight line, pick one direction and sail straight. That way, when we reach the opposite shore, as long as we remember that point, we can turn around and follow a straight line back from there to find the mouth of the river we came from. So, from now on, we head due west, straight ahead. With compasses in hand, we won't have trouble finding west. Also," Yu Fu added, "to prevent a compass from going haywire and pointing the wrong way, we need to pool them together. On my lead ship, we'll keep at least 3. That way, even if one breaks, we won't go too far off course. The ships behind just need to follow me closely." Hearing this, everyone felt it was a reliable plan, although still somewhat risky. It was the best way to minimize the danger. The idea of using the compasses together, especially, was brilliant. The chieftain's inventions were impressive, but who could guarantee they wouldn't malfunction at a critical moment? Having several provided a safeguard. The plan was unanimously approved. The fleet had 6 compasses in total. Several captains contributed 1 each, and suddenly Yu Fu's lead ship had 4. Everyone felt much more secure. Surely 4 compasses couldn't break down simultaneously. What kind of rotten luck would that take? The fleet set off again. To make good time, both sails were fully hoisted, pushing the speed to the maximum. Yu Fu also assigned 4 men on the lead ship specifically to watch the compasses, checking the direction frequently, and constantly adjusting course to ensure the fleet consistently headed due west. They drifted on the water like this for 3 days. Finally, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, they saw the lake shore they had longed for day and night. Along the distant shore, colorful water birds splashed and foraged on the water's surface. The lakeside grass was lush and fertile, with herds of horses, cattle, and sheep roaming about as if frolicking. Not far from the livestock, white tents dotted the yellow-green grassland here and there. This scene was incredibly familiar to the crew members who had previously traveled the grasslands with Yu Fu. There was no doubt about it. This was their destination. "Lower the small boats. Go check the water depth near the shore," Yu Fu ordered amidst a wave of excited cheers. Meanwhile, the herdsmen grazing livestock on the shore had long noticed the anomaly on the water. Someone immediately jumped on a swift horse and galloped back to the tribe to report. Thud, thud, thud. The fine horse flew across the ground, reaching the tents several li away in no time. The rider shouted at the top of his lungs, "Chieftain, I saw the Han tribe's flag. Chieftain, the Han tribe people are here." The rider galloped and yelled the whole way, causing tribespeople along the route to turn and stare. He paid them no mind, focused solely on reaching the chieftain's main tent. Before he could get there, Suritu himself emerged from the large tent. "The Han tribe people are here? Where? Is it the merchant caravan returning from the south or the diplomatic mission?" Suritu asked, looking around but seeing no familiar carts or banners, feeling slightly annoyed. "Chieftain, the Han tribe people are on the sunrise." "See," the rider reported, sounding a bit unsure himself halfway through. Could people really emerge from the water? If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe it even if beaten to death. "What the hell? On the sunrise sea?" Suritu flared up. "You've gotten bold, haven't you? Daring to fool me with such nonsense? People crawling out of the water. Why don't you just say the Han tribe people are transformed fish?" He went up and gave the herdsman a kick, sending him staggering. The poor herdsman felt terribly wronged but didn't dare retaliate, only muttering softly, "I'm not lying. They really came from the water in the east. If you don't believe me, chieftain, go see for yourself. They were a bit far off just now, but they've probably reached the shore by now." Hearing this, Suritu was skeptical. If it were any other tribe, he definitely wouldn't believe it. But when the Han tribe was involved, those guys always managed to come up with strange contraptions. No matter how bizarre, it seemed plausible when it came to them. Left with no choice, Suritu decided to go take a look himself. Ignoring the unlucky herdsman, Suritu swung onto his large yellow horse and dashed to the lakeside like a gust of wind. As soon as he arrived, he saw a group of herdsmen who had abandoned their flocks, all gathered together, pointing and gesturing toward the distant lake surface. Out on the water, the Han tribe's large ships had stopped and were lowering small boats. After a while, several small vessels, some under sail, others rowed, headed towards the shore. The large sailing ships also formed a line abreast, following from a distance, getting closer and closer to the bank. The herdsmen were dumbfounded. Never mind the gigantic sailing ships. Even the smaller boats were something they had never seen before. In all their lives, they had never witnessed anything that could move so fast on water. Suritu was even more stunned, utterly shocked. He saw 3 enormous man-made monsters approaching one after another on the distant lake surface. He didn't know what those things were called, but one look at the gaudy decorations told him they were definitely the handiwork of the Han tribe. 3 large ships, their hulls painted red and black, adorned with bright yellow lines and patterns. Precisely the flashy colors the Han tribe loved to show off, as eye-catching as the red robes and black armor of their cavalry. Not only that, but atop these nameless things stood 2 huge wings, one yellow and white, with a blood-red character, Han, in the middle. The other, larger one, dyed pure red with a pitch-black Han in its center. Suritu didn't know many Han characters, but this character, Han, he couldn't be more familiar with it. Probably throughout the entire grassland, including all the tribes, there wasn't anyone who didn't recognize this character. Why? It was so damn familiar. Those utterly unscrupulous people from the Han tribe, everything they sold, except for edible salt, whether pots, pans, cloth, or knives, was branded with the 4 large characters Dahan Jizao, made by Great Han. You couldn't avoid seeing it even if you wanted to. After seeing it enough times, you just remembered it. Before long, Yuji had approached the shore in a scouting dinghy. The boat's approach startled a large flock of water birds, ancient, giant geese over 2 meters tall, white cranes with long legs and slender necks, albatrosses circling high above, green-headed mallards drifting playfully on the water. All were scared far away from the fleet. Suritu had already pushed aside the tribesmen blocking his way and ridden his horse to the water's edge. Seeing that the people arriving from the water were indeed Han tribe members, dressed in Han robes, with their hair tied up, the anxiety in his heart instantly dissipated, replaced by great cheer. "Ah, we've finally been waiting for you. Friends from the Han tribe." Suritu quickly dismounted and jogged to the water's edge to greet them. "You are Chief Suritu? Your tribe has moved here?" Yuji had accompanied Yu Fu on outings more than once and naturally recognized Suritu. Seeing him again, he identified him immediately. "Oh, you're Yu Fu's boy. Nephew, Yuji, right?" "Ha ha ha ha, you've finally come." Suritu was also delighted to see a familiar face. "I ran into your Han tribe's diplomatic mission and merchant caravan before, but the people were different. I thought I'd never see you and your uncle again. By the way, where is your uncle? Did he come too?" "My uncle came too. He's on the large ship behind." Yuji pointed to the 3 large sailing ships not far off. "But the water is too shallow near the shore. The big ships can't get close. I'll have someone take a small boat to fetch him right away." "Really? That's wonderful. Quickly, go get your uncle. Don't leave today. I'll slaughter a bull to welcome you. I know you Han tribe people are usually reluctant to eat these." Suritu patted his chest, speaking generously. "All right, I'll arrange it." Yuji smiled and nodded, telling the people in the dinghy to head back first, instruct the large ships to anchor 100 meters offshore, and inform Yu Fu that Suritu's tribe was on the shore. Yu Fu would naturally know what to do. Thus, shortly after, all 6 landing craft from the fleet were launched. Yu Fu left some men to guard the ships, while he led the others ashore in the small boats. Suritu hurried to welcome them with his men, exchanging enthusiastic greetings with Yu Fu, and insisting on inviting them to his tribe for hospitality. However, Yu Fu and his men had arrived by boat and hadn't brought a single horse. Getting to Suritu's settlement required walking several li, which wasn't convenient for such a large group. "Chief Suritu, no need for such trouble." Yu Fu waved his hand. "Let my tribesmen stay here by the shore. They need to watch the boats anyway. I'll just bring a few who can ride. Just send some food over for them later." "Well, all right then." Suritu couldn't really force the issue and had to agree. "Men, bring some horses over." Before long, the Han tribe crew members who had come ashore set up tents on an empty patch of ground by the bank, starting to fetch water, gather firewood, and prepare to camp on the spot. Yu Fu and Yuji, along with about 20 other tribesmen, who knew how to ride, mounted the horses brought by the herdsmen, and followed Suritu back to his settlement. Suritu quickly ordered cattle and sheep to be slaughtered, to prepare a great feast for his guests. At the same time, he didn't forget to send messengers inviting the chiefs of the other tribes in the alliance. The Han tribe had brought 200 or 300 people, and this meat feast was no small matter. He couldn't be expected to provide all the cattle and sheep himself. Once Yu Fu was welcomed into his main tent and served steaming fresh milk, Suritu couldn't wait to start pouring out his grievances. As he spoke, he vehemently cursed Modun's various crimes, disrupting the peace of the grasslands, bullying weaker tribes, killing men, stealing livestock and women. While he was talking animatedly, spittle flying, the other invited tribal chiefs heard that the Han tribe had arrived and also hurried over, leading cattle and driving sheep. As soon as they entered the main tent, they heard Suritu complaining to Yu Fu, and one by one, filled with righteous indignation, they joined, the grand chorus denouncing Modun. So, you're saying you're very short on white salt now? And that Modun fellow won't sell it to you? Yu Fu listened for a while, gradually figuring out the recent troublesome matters on the grassland. He thought to himself, after all this, it seems the root of this chaos on the grassland lies with us, the Han tribe. If they hadn't attacked the Jin tribe's merchant caravan and stopped them from selling salt on the grassland, the Jin tribe wouldn't have come up with such a lousy plan to sell all their salt to a single tribe. And as it turned out, the partner they chose happened to be an ambitious man. With a large supply of white salt in hand, Modun was naturally going to stir up trouble on the grassland. Yes, Suritu wore a pained expression. Do you happen to have brought any white salt this time? Could you sell some to us? We really don't have much left of the salt we stored up before. When we met your, diplomatic mission earlier, we wanted to buy salt, but they wouldn't sell, saying they'd see if they had any left on their way back. You see. The surrounding tribal chiefs also looked eagerly at Yu Fu, chiming in with agreement. Yu Fu thought for a moment, chuckled, and said, their diplomatic mission has different tasks from ours. They have their own business to attend to. However, I didn't bring much white salt this time either. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you chiefs. When they heard Yu Fu say he didn't have much white salt, the disappointment on everyone's faces was so thick you could wring water from it. But they didn't dare complain. After all, the Han tribe was now their only source for salt. The other supplier, the Shin tribe, had completely thrown in their lot with Modun. If they offended the Han tribe too, they truly would have no way to survive. So they remained polite and respectful towards Yu Fu. Seeing the atmosphere, Yu Fu cleared his throat and began his performance. Chieftains, you all know, this time we came by water, feeling our way across the river, so to speak. Honestly, at the beginning, we really didn't think we could sail directly here to the grasslands, so we didn't bring many goods for trade. However, his tone shifted, keeping everyone in suspense. We did bring a little white salt, though not much. It's not that we can't sell it to you. If you can ration it, use it sparingly day to day, it should be enough to get you through this winter. Moreover, now that we've opened up this water route to the grasslands, coming here in the future will be much more convenient. Boats can carry far more cargo too. If you need it, come spring next year, we'll sail over and bring you large quantities of white salt. And if you move your tribes over here earlier next year, won't this crisis be solved? It's just that... Yu Fu stroked his chin. Traveling by water this time, we can't take live animals back for now. We can only trade for non-perishable goods. Animal hides, cattle sinews, horns. We need all of those. See how much you can gather. If you want to trade, I'll have my men bring the salt off the ships right now. Oh, right, he added, as if just remembering, I also brought along some pots, pans, cloth, and the like. If you want those, that's fine too. Yu Fu's mind was busy calculating the advantages. They had originally set out on this trip intending to pioneer a new shipping route and had prepared goods for trading with unfamiliar tribes. The holds of the 3 large ships, besides food and drink, were packed with various commodities. Who knew they'd change plans midway and come to the grasslands? Since they were here, selling the goods to someone was better than selling to no one. Selling to these herdsmen could at least fetch some useful hides and sinews, which was far better than making an empty trip and hauling everything back unchanged. That works too. Suritu's eyes lit up at the mention of salt. As the alliance leader, he made the decision first. Something is better than nothing. Let's just get through this winter first. But then his brow furrowed, revealing a worried expression. He looked cautiously at Yu Fu. It's just, I'm a bit concerned. Concerned about what? Yu Fu pretended not to understand. We have no objection to your arrangements, and moving here earlier next year is no problem either. I'm just afraid of that Modun. What if we come here next spring and he's already occupied this place? We can't beat him in a fight, so how could we trade with you then? Suritu spread his hands, looking troubled, while secretly observing Yu Fu's reaction. Yu Fu didn't respond directly, instead asking, so what is Chief Suritu suggesting? Do you have an idea? Let me be honest with you. We really didn't bring much salt this time. If you don't believe me, you can go aboard and see for yourself. No, no, no. Suritu quickly waved his hands. I absolutely trust our friends from the Han tribe. I just had an idea. I wonder if your Han tribe would agree. What idea? I was thinking. Suritu leaned closer. The reason that Modun is so aggressive, isn't it because he has the Shin tribe backing him, supplying them with good horse gear and weapons? If the Han tribe could also sell these things to us, we wouldn't be so passive. Setting aside other things, just give us the Han tribe's iron stirrups and iron arrowheads, and we can definitely take down that bastard Modun. If we could get your steel knives, that would be even better. As Suritu spoke, he secretly glanced at Yufu's face. Unfortunately, Yufu's expression remained completely blank, like he was wearing a mask. Yufu pondered for a moment. This request of yours, I don't have the authority to agree. Besides, our chieftain probably wouldn't agree either. You know that while our Han tribe sells ironware, we never sell weapons. Iron pots, scissors, no problem. But the things you mentioned, it's a long shot. Anyway, I don't think the chieftain would agree. Furthermore, Yufu became more animated as he spoke, sounding genuinely concerned for them. Do you know how difficult it is to make these weapons? How much effort it takes to smelt iron each year? Even if our chieftain were willing to sell, you probably couldn't afford them. Forget it, forget it. He waved his hand dismissively, as if settling the matter. Don't say that. Suritu grew anxious. This was a potential lifeline. We don't need the knives. Arrowheads should be all right, right? If not arrowheads, then stirrups must be. Okay. A higher price is fine. We know these fine things aren't easy to make, but we don't need that many. Seeing that Yufu hadn't completely shut the door and was still haggling over the price, Suritu's hope flared anew. These were treasures. What was there to fear about the cost? With these, he could lead his men to raid that scoundrel Modun. Would they lack funds then? Yufu narrowed his eyes, sneering inwardly. Still want iron arrowheads? I wouldn't even dare give you knives, let alone arrowheads. Those things are long-range killing machines, even deadlier than knives on the battlefield. However, on second thought, another idea beneficial to the Han tribe popped into Yufu's mind. So, he changed his tune. Chief Suritu, say no more. It's useless talking to me, I don't have the authority. What goods we trade has to be decided by our chieftain. I can't make that call. However, regarding your concern, I do have an idea. I wonder what you all think. Suritu had intended to press further, but hearing Yufu say this, he had to let it go and follow along, asking, what brilliant idea does Brother Yufu have? Look, Yufu began his grand scheme of persuasion. Now that we've opened, this water route trading in the grasslands will be much faster in the future. Transporting goods from our Han tribe territory, traveling day and night, takes less than a month. But it's still not very convenient. There's no foothold, no proper dock for large ships, and loading and unloading bulky cargo is difficult. Weren't you just worried about Modun seizing your territory and affecting our trade? Then how about this? Yufu revealed his true objective. You tribes set aside a piece of land for us Han tribe, right here by the shore of this great lake. We'll build a dock here capable of berthing large ships, put up a few warehouses, and station some merchants here permanently. Then you can come trade whenever you want. This way, this piece of land becomes Han tribe territory. I imagine, on these grasslands, no one would dare to come looking for trouble with our Han tribe, right? When the time comes, I don't believe that Modun would dare do anything to us. Besides, he doesn't have the capability. As soon as Yufu said this, the tent fell completely silent. The group of tribal chiefs was utterly stunned. They liked the Han tribe's merchant caravans, and they liked the Han tribe's goods even more. But allowing the Han tribe to establish a foothold on the grasslands, nobody could predict the consequences. Consider this. Even a powerful alliance like the Shin tribe and Modun couldn't defeat the Han tribe. If the Han tribe decided to bully them in the future, would their small forces even be enough to put up a fight? They didn't want to drive away the wolf only to invite the tiger. It's easy to invite gods, but hard to send them away. However, it was truly difficult to refuse this offer directly. On the surface, the Han tribe establishing a permanent trading post, or a market as they called it, would benefit everyone and be very convenient. This, Suritu pondered for a long time without reaching a conclusion, deciding to probe. First, it certainly sounds like a good idea. With Han tribe people permanently stationed here, Modun probably wouldn't dare act recklessly. It's just, I wonder how much land the Han tribe needs. If the area is too large, it would be difficult for us too. The land by the lake is prime pasture with lush water and grass. We graze our herds here every summer and autumn. As soon as he said this, the other chiefs nodded in agreement, looking expectantly at Yu Fu. Seeing their reaction, Yu Fu chuckled. Inwardly, can you nomads who only know how to chase cattle and sheep possibly compare to the land management skills of us agricultural people? However, it was precisely because he understood the nomadic tribe's lack of skill in intensive cultivation and their different perception of land value that he had come up with this idea. Yu Fu pretended to think. Not very large. About 5 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. 5 kilometers long and wide. How big is that? Suritu looked completely baffled. He had no concept of the Han tribe's units of length. Well, it's hard to explain clearly, just with words. Yu Fu spread his hands. It's getting late today. How about tomorrow I have my men measure it out for you to see? Well, all right. Suritu had no other option but to wait until tomorrow. You've traveled a long way and must be tired. Let's not talk about this today. Let's eat first. Eat. The topic was temporarily dropped. Herdsmen outside quickly brought in roasted beef and mutton. The Han tribe members didn't stand on ceremony, rolling up their sleeves and digging in. Mutton wasn't rare, but beef was a precious commodity in the Han tribe. Cattle were vital draft animals there. Whether owned by the state or individuals, treated better than ancestors, fed better than people. Who would bear to slaughter them? Besides, the government forbade the random slaughter of cattle unless you wanted to be buried with the ox. They ate and drank heartily, and both hosts and guests were satisfied. Early the next morning, Yu Fu took the group of tribal chiefs to the lakeside. He first arranged for men to unload the salt and other goods from the ships, preparing for immediate trade with the chiefs. Payment on delivery. Those with hides, sinews, and horns could trade these non-perishable goods. Those without had to pay on the spot with cattle or horses. Buying on credit? Not a chance. This was the rule of Han tribe merchant caravans. Fair trade for young and old, built on reputation. While arranging the trade and inventory count on one side, Yu Fu dispatched another team to measure the land. The fleet carried measuring ropes, so surveying land was a piece of cake for them. Soon, people got to work, starting the measurement westward along the lake shore, 5 kilometers long, 5 kilometers wide. This area, in modern terms, is roughly the size of a small county town. For the current Han tribe, it was equivalent to a commandery seat. The Han tribe's largest commandery, Ruyang, had city walls about 1 kilometer square, housed over 10,000 people, and including the surrounding farmland, was roughly this size. If they could really secure such a piece of land on the grassland and manage it well, it would basically be like gaining a whole commandery for the Han tribe for free. Of course, this was calculated based on the Han tribe's method of management. If it were the nomadic tribes, that was another story entirely. The morning passed, and around noon, the land measurement was complete. A territory 5 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide, when viewed from the ground, indeed stretched beyond the limit of sight. In reality, however, riding around its perimeter on horseback didn't take too long. Yu Fu rode alongside Suritu, and the other tribal chiefs circling the marked-out boundary. Then both sides burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha! Suritu laughed until he nearly fell off his horse. So this is what you Han tribe people mean by 5 kilometers long and wide. Just this big. No problem. Even if the other chiefs don't agree. My Suritu tribe alone can grant this bit of land to our Han tribe friends. I just hope that once the Han tribe merchants are stationed here permanently, they can give my tribe a discount when trading." "Hey, how can that be?" Another chief immediately objected. "How can you take all the benefits, Suritu? It's such a small piece of land, our tribe can spare it too. You should give us a discount when selling things to us as well." Yes. The chiefs behind them also readily agreed. "Our tribe can make some room too. I think we should all just shift our pastures outwards a bit and leave enough space for our Han tribe friends for a settlement of 1,000 people. Never mind 5 kilometers square, even several times bigger wouldn't be a problem." One after another, they eagerly offered to cede land, the condition naturally being the hope of getting discounts on future purchases. Yu Fu watched this group of chiefs vying to cede territory, secretly laughing to himself. He had been around the grasslands long enough to be intimately familiar with the nomadic way of life. Nomadic tribes generally consisted of individual families, each with its own tent. They relied entirely on livestock for sustenance, but mainly consumed milk, cheese, yogurt, and other dairy products, not primarily meat. Feasting on meat daily? That was a privilege reserved for chiefs. Ordinary herdsmen might get some scraps of meat in winter. Want meat? Hunt it yourself. Water birds and fish from the lake, wild animals and wolves from the grassland, all could fill their bellies. An ordinary family of 5 needed at least 50 sheep, 5 horses, 5 cattle, plus several sheepdogs just to maintain a basic living. This meant, on average, 1 horse, 10 sheep, and 1 cow per person, just to meet the most basic dairy needs, not even accounting for meat, hides, and fur. Not to mention the typical grassland cavalrymen, who would be embarrassed to go out without at least 3 horses. Calculated this way, one family had to support 80 to 90 head of livestock. So many mouths, all relying on grass. How vast a pasture did they require? It might sound unbelievable, but a good pasture 5 kilometers square could, at most, support 2 or 3 herdsman families for only about a month. Those animals, especially sheep, grazed like bulldozers, leaving the ground barren where they passed. Grass needed time to regrow, so they had to constantly migrate, following the grass, hence the term nomadic. Therefore, the plot of land Yu Fu requested, while seen by the Han tribe as a precious site capable of supporting a commandery seat and thousands of people, was, in the eyes of these herdsmen, barely enough for a few families to pitch temporary tents and graze sheep, negligibly small. Different lifestyles naturally led to different values. This was what caused these chiefs to be so generous in ceding territory and paying reparations. However, this was precisely what the Han tribe desired most. Deciding on ceding the land was remarkably quick. The nomadic chieftains waved their hands grandly, ultimately settling on an area 4 times larger than Yu Fu had initially requested, 10 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide. It sounded impressive, but set against the boundless expanse of the great grasslands, it wasn't all that much. However, the specific location for this plot hadn't been determined yet. That would have to wait until the Han tribe personnel conducted surveys and measurements. What was agreed upon now was the size. The location the Han tribe eventually chose had to be adjacent to the Great Lake, and it couldn't exceed this agreed-upon area. Of course, this flexible site selection was Yu Fu's own suggestion. His reasoning was sound. It doesn't matter to us Han tribe which piece of land we get. The main purpose is to build docks and warehouses. We need to find the most suitable place for a dock first. Otherwise, randomly marking out a plot is useless. As for why Suritu and the others proactively increased the offered area, firstly, it was to curry favor with the Han tribe and ally themselves closely. Secondly, it was for future trading convenience. Consider this. Most of what they traded were live cattle and sheep. After the Han tribe received the goods, they couldn't just make them disappear instantly, could they? They needed a place to keep them temporarily, right? So giving a bit more land was also convenient for themselves. Yu Fu accepted everything offered. The more, the better. What was wrong with more land? The Han tribe never felt they had too much of anything, except too little land. With land, they could grow grain, build houses, mine ores. They could make money. Who would find having too much money burdensome? With the agreement finalized, the next step was the most sacred ceremony on the grasslands, slaughtering a bull and sealing the oath with blood. On the morning of the third day, somehow the chieftains procured a completely snow-white young heifer. According to them, white cattle were the most sacred, serving as a direct line to communicate with the heavens. Using it as a sacrifice ensured their oaths would be heard by the sky god. And so, under the crisp autumn sky of the grassland, several colorfully dressed, mystical-looking shaman priests began officiating the ceremony. An altar was erected, surrounded by a group of tribal chiefs. The poor little heifer's head was chopped off with a crack as an offering to the heavens. Then, everyone present, including Yu Fu, smeared a dab of the warm bull's blood on their foreheads. Following that, they lined up, each pressing their hand onto the still-dripping bull's head to swear an oath. The content was basically, "We nomadic tribes guarantee to provide land to the Han tribe. The Han tribe guarantees fair trade with us, and anyone who breaks the oath will face divine retribution by lightning," and so on. Finally, the shaman cut off the two horns. Yu Fu and Suritu each took one, serving as proof of the covenant. Although Yu Fu went through the entire process, he felt utterly indifferent towards it inwardly. Just two lousy horns without a single written word. How could this serve as proof? What a sham. Moreover, the penalty for breach of contract relied entirely on the ethereal sky god, with no third-party guarantor whatsoever. The binding force of this covenant depended entirely on how superstitious the oath-takers were. Over 3 days, Yu Fu traded everything on the ships, except for the return journey rations, for animal hides, cattle horns, and sinews. Then, he led the fleet to begin the return voyage. The 3 large sailing ships formed a line and sailed straight east, following the route they had taken. Yu Fu also discovered that this huge freshwater lake, much like the autumn back in the Han tribe's homeland, was teeming with fish migrating from the sea to spawn. He meticulously recorded this important piece of information in his navigation log. East of the grasslands lies a great lake called the Sunrise Sea. The lake teems with so many fish they can't all be caught, and water birds blot out the sky. In the lakeside wetlands, tapirs, rhinos, elephants, tigers, leopards, jackals, and wolves abound. These can serve as initial food reserves for our soldiers and civilians building the city. Great Han Grassland Trading Post. I think it works. You clutch the secret letter delivered by Yu Fu via Falcon Messenger, feeling delighted inwardly, deeply agreeing with that final sentence. The ancients put it well. Anything with its back to the sky is food for us. How damn true, as long as it's a living creature with its back facing upwards. What is there that our great foodie empire wouldn't dare to eat? Except perhaps for the people from 1 or 2 specific places. In the letter, Yu Fu briefly reported his recent experiences, leaving the Lu tribe's coal mine, encountering a barbarian tribe, trying to trade with them only to be ambushed, resulting in the loss of a few men. Then going to Shazhou, encountering crocodiles lurking in the water and the Li tribe on the shore, smoothly persuading the entire Li tribe. Cats, referred to as Linu, leopard slaves, and all, onto the ships. Then, downstream, they discovered the Yujiang tribe, and even invited their chief named Xuan to visit the Han tribe as a guest, though he specifically emphasized that this Chief Xuan was extremely difficult to handle, and the matter was far from settled. Finally, there was their accidental discovery of the waterway leading to the Great Lake on the grasslands, successfully reaching the grasslands, learning about the dramatic changes there over the past 6 months, and reaching the land grant agreement with Suritu and his group. At the end of the letter, Yu Fu specifically stressed, if you, chieftain, agree to build a city on the grasslands, arrange for supplies, manpower, and more ships immediately. After reading the letter, you were overjoyed. The Han tribe had a new development opportunity, which was certainly a good thing. It was just this development speed was a bit too fast, uncomfortably fast, stretching resources thin. There was a shortage of people everywhere. Materials were manageable, but this labor shortage problem was driving you crazy. A solution had to be found. Fortunately, the infrastructure in the various newly established commanderies and counties was mostly completed this year, finally freeing up those captured cannibal slaves. However, you had no intention of letting them retire peacefully. Coincidentally, a new construction project had arrived. Wouldn't it be perfect to pack them all off to the Grassland construction site? And that barbarian tribe. How dare they kill citizens of Great Han? They truly had a death wish. However, heaven values life, and you weren't a bloodthirsty person. Give them a chance for labor reform and to turn over a new leaf. Capture them all, and make them serve the Han tribe as laborers to atone for their crimes. Just as this thought occurred, you started worrying again. Capture people? Easier said than done. Who to send? You, the tribal chieftain, couldn't possibly lead a slave-catching expedition personally, could you? An army had to be formed. This brought you back to the same problem. Still short of people, right? You'd gone in a circle and ended up back where you started. How difficult is it to be the founder of a new rising empire? You just wanted to look up at the sky and sigh. This is too hard. Think back to the spring and autumn and warring states. Periods, Qin's unification of the 6 states, the Ming dynasty driving out the Mongols. Didn't every war involve armies numbering in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions? Where did they get so many people? Could their productivity have been higher than the current Han tribes? Nonsense. The Han tribe even possessed some technologies, more advanced than theirs. So why did the Han tribe lack soldiers? Wasn't it due to the system and historical background? Back in the Warring States period, any of the 7 major states could easily field an army of 200,000. Why? Because they had grain reserves in their granaries, and more importantly, they practiced compulsory military service. What did that mean? It meant soldiers weren't paid, weren't issued clothes or shoes. Those who survived the war might receive some rewards based on merit. If they died, there wasn't even a pension for their families. Furthermore, this compulsory service had to ensure only sons weren't drafted. A family needed at least 2 sons before one could be taken for military service, leaving the other to farm at home, ensuring rear production wasn't hampered by war. By the Ming dynasty, old Zhu Yuanzhang took this system to the extreme. At its peak, the Ming standing army approached 3 million. How many soldiers does a country with over 1 billion people have today? Back then, the Ming dynasty only had tens of millions of commoners, yet they could support such a massive army. How did Zhu Yuanzhang manage it? Wasn't it through the Weisuo military household system? Soldiers farmed their own assigned lands. To support themselves, the state only needed to provide weapons and equipment. Military pay, none. Rations, grow your own. It was practically the cheapest army in history. You couldn't blame old Zhu for being stingy. The Ming dynasty was truly poor when first established, and he was forced into it. Did you not understand these clever tricks? Wasn't compulsory service appealing? Wasn't the Weisuo system economical? You wanted to emulate them too. Unfortunately, the current situation of the Han tribe didn't allow it. Most of the Han tribe's populace were recently settled immigrants. Families typically consisted of young couples with toddlers aged 2 or 3. The situation of one son goes to war while brothers remain to farm simply didn't exist. Therefore, forcibly conscripting soldiers would undoubtedly cripple rear production. It was as plain as day. And the culprit responsible for all this, ultimately, was yourself. The Han tribe's population composition relied almost entirely on external immigrants. Children born and raised within the Han tribe were, at most, 5 years old now. The backbone of the tribe still depended on those external migrant workers. And to consolidate your rule, you had forcefully implemented the household registration and equal citizenry system. Bianhu Kimin. All adult males had to marry, establish their own households, and become independent. The purpose was twofold. First, to promote population growth. Second, and most importantly, to divide and dismantle potential clan, lineage, and small tribal power structures. You belong to the same clan? You're the clan head? Impressive. I'll scatter your clansmen to the four winds, settling them far and wide, and see how you challenge me then. Also, you often rewarded meritorious tribesmen. Rewarded them with what? First, a surname. You were originally from the Hu clan. Fine. I now bestow upon you the surname Li. From now on, you are the founding ancestor of the old Li family. This way, you and your original clan become separate families. Let's see how you mobilize clan power against me then. However, the consequence of doing this was that the Han tribe expanded rapidly, like a dividing cell, but its foundation was shallow, lacking accumulation. Families with many brothers were rare. Young men had to split off and form their own households as soon as they reached adulthood to contribute to the Han tribe's population growth. The end result was, want to conscript soldiers? No people. Conscript soldiers? No one left at home. To farm. Without food, the common people would starve. You paced restlessly inside the room, making your first wife, Xiao Dai, and second wife, Zhan Ying, who were sitting on the bed sewing clothes for the children, dizzy. You slumped down helplessly, resting your forehead in your hand. What is husband worrying about again? Xiao Di couldn't help but ask. She had a gentle nature, and seeing you like this made her worry too. Isn't our Han tribe developing? Quite well now. Sigh, we're short of people. You sighed. Development is good, but we're spreading ourselves too thin, needing people everywhere. The newly discovered coal mine needs people. Building factories on the lake island needs people. Going out to fight wars needs people. And that boy Yu Fu has even occupied land on the Grasslands. We'll definitely build a new city there in the future. How many people will that require? People needed everywhere, but the immigrants in various places have just settled down and can't be easily moved. This is worrying me sick. Zhan Ying beside you hadn't been with the Han tribe long, didn't know the tribe's situation well, and hadn't traveled around the various commanderies and counties, so she couldn't offer any good suggestions for your worries. But Xiao Dai was different. She was one of the Han tribe's veterans and knew the tribe's development history clearly. Hearing you say there was no one available, she asked strangely, didn't many new people arrive in Yunji's Weishan commandery? Last time I heard, you say the new population there exceeded 10,000. And Liuyang commandery has also been absorbing outsiders these past few years. Can't we transfer some people from there? Hearing this, you were first stunned, then slapped your thigh hard and burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha. That's right. How could I have forgotten about that? There are new immigrants there. Haven't they not yet been allocated sufficient housing? And land. Perfect. We'll start with them. You leaped up excitedly, and before your voice faded, you had already rushed out the door like a gust of wind, heading straight for Liuyang commandery. Yudias and Zhan Yang were left looking at each other, completely baffled, but they were used to it. Their husband was the tribal chieftain, always incredibly busy, often leaving home for months at a time. There was nothing they could do. You traveled without stopping, reaching Liuyang commandery in just one day. Finding the commandery governor, Dashu, you didn't even take a sip of water before getting straight to the point. How many outsiders have arrived this year? How many who are young able-bodied men? Are they all settled? Dashu was startled by your frantic manner, pausing for a moment before quickly replying. Reporting to the chieftain, about 6,000 more people have arrived this year. Adult males, probably fewer than 2,000. Their household registrations are complete, and housing has been arranged. As for farmland, it's all been allocated. Some who were quick have already planted crops. For others, it's too late this year. These people are either finding handicraft work or engaging in small trade to get by. Nearly 2,000 able-bodied men. You stroked your chin, pondering for a moment, then immediately ordered Dashu, all right, recruit soldiers from these people. Note down the recruitment conditions. Yes, I'll get paper and pen right away. Dashu didn't dare delay, quickly taking out his small notebook and charcoal pencil, looking at you eagerly, ready to record. Listen carefully. Effective immediately. Recruit 500 soldiers. Requirements: must be healthy without disabilities, aged 18 to 40, must have sons at home. Priority given to those who haven't yet been allocated farmland. Soldier benefits: monthly military pay of 30 yuan. Meritorious service on the battlefield can lead to enfeoffment with a noble title, depending on the achievement. Rewards for killing enemies. Rewards for capturing prisoners. Compensation for sacrifice: a one-time funeral allowance of 50 yuan. His eldest son's noble rank will be promoted by 1 level. The martyr's family will receive a monthly subsidy of 10 yuan, continuing until his son comes of age and establishes his own household. This subsidy is per household, received by his widow. If the widow remarries, it will be received by his son. Order: from the date this notice is issued, 500 men must be recruited within 7 days. Then send people to escort these new recruits entirely to Hanyang City.